You're listening to Workplace Perspective, an employment law podcast presented by Saffire Legal. Workplace Perspective is a regular podcast series for employers and employees focusing on education, training, and the law to help organizations of all sizes develop and maintain successful workplace relationships. The opinions expressed by guests on Workplace Perspective do not necessarily reflect those of Saffire Legal or its attorneys and should not be considered legal advice. And now, here's your host, founder and principal attorney at Saffire Legal, Teresa McQueen.
Teresa McQueen, before she comes on, I just want to formally thank you for joining the station here at OC Talk Radio. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
We are so excited to have your show, Workplace Perspective, starting today for two reasons. One, because we do mostly business shows, and I'm telling you, every small business owner, me included, hates, frightened, scared of employment law, particularly here in California. Oh, my goodness, what did I do now? What am I going to get caught for now here? So I know you're going to give it from both perspectives, both the employer and the employee perspective. I can't wait to hear that. And the other reason is because here we are, the voice of Orange County, and we're a bunch of old white guys like me here. So I'm pleased to have more diversity and a feminine perspective on the station here.
Well, we're all about perspective.
So did I get in trouble? Did I phrase that correctly?
That was just fine.
Okay. All right. Well,
that wasn't legal advice, by the way.
Yes. And let's make that clear. We're going to say it about 12 times. This is about education only. This is not a legal advice show here. We're simply trying to raise some points and bring some issues and some different perspectives to the workplace, right?
Absolutely.
So what's wrong with the workplace? Why are all of us scared of the workplace?
I think the workplace has a lot of different dynamics to it. And everything that goes on in the workplace, from employee selection to onboarding to our day-to-day lives to the end of that relationship, is fraught with difficult situations. And I think it's how people approach those difficult situations that cause such perplexities.
But it wasn't so complicated once before. You know, it seemed to be we somehow operate, and I'm sure it wasn't all Leave It to Beaver. We know there was the age of what was it called, Mad Men. There was a lot of mischief going on, but everybody just looked the other way here. So I'm not going to say it was better once before, but it does seem like it's more complicated these days.
A lot of people say that, and I start out all of my sexual harassment trainings or anti-discrimination trainings by asking people this question. So do you think that people are ruder now than they were 20 or 30 years ago? And of course, most people raise their hand. Oh, yeah, it's really bad. Social media and tribalism and fights and yeah. And I think most people agree with that. But I do think that with the advent of social media, we are more aware of what other people think and how they feel. But I do think that there is a bit of nostalgia. I think people do tend to look back on not necessarily the good old days, but things were certainly simpler because our lives were smaller.
Yes.
So, in school, it's all about you, and as you grow, when you get out of school, you get away from the educational confines.
Wait, you mean it's not about me still? I thought it still is. Come on.
Well, that's some of the problem in the workplace right there.
Yeah, right.
But as our lives get more complicated and our lives brush up against one another professionally and personally, and we start to encounter more things, that it does get a little more complicated, and things do seem like they were a lot easier way back when our lives were a little bit smaller. But
you got to admit that from a legal perspective, the workplace legally seems like it's more complicated than ever before. And I'll give you an example. As I'm telling everybody this week, I'm feeling sad. My late aunt passed away. She was 94. Wonderful lady. And we talked about it many times. She worked in, what would they call it? It worked in an employment office. They didn't call it that anymore. And then it became HR, human resources, or other sorts of things. This is 40 years ago. This is back after World War II. And she worked for 40 years for Hartford Insurance in their HR department. It was pretty much just hiring and firing people and payroll. There wasn't a lot of legal training, worrying about what was going to happen and how from everything, not just how you treat each other, but how do you bring people in? How do you let them go? I mean, all these sorts of things that now we seem to have blossomed into a litigious workplace. Well, I think, or is that just my old guy perspective here?
No. I do think that there is that perception out there, but I also think that, again, life has gotten a little more complicated, and it's not quite as simple anymore as just hire someone stays at the company for the majority of their career,
Right.
and then they leave. We are much more mobile. We're much more open. Again, the advent of social media, we are able to reach out across all kinds of communication platforms. And I think that in doing so, it has become a little more complicated. And we've become aware of things, like you mentioned, the Mad Men scenario. And
Yes,
one of
right.
the things that I talk about in trainings that I do is that things that it may seem like that was acceptable, but I think it was just nobody thought to question it at the time.
Right.
And we're
That's what
certainly-
my aunt said. She said,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, she was a single lady her whole life. And she said, yeah, guys grabbed me and did all sorts of stuff. And you just kind of sucked it up. And that's part of working, because she was a working person in a world where most people got married and had children. She didn't. She was a career person.
Right. And I think that as we start to rise above all of that and understanding that, despite maybe how you were raised or despite how you grew up in the professional world, everybody has to adapt to stay relevant and to stay successful, I think.
So what brought you into this realm of the law? I, like you, went to law school, hated it, however, and left after 1 year. I went to William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, and couldn't stand it. And so I'm always interested to see not only why. I get that it's fascinating. I get that it's certainly intellectually stimulating trying to figure all this stuff out. But why employment law? Of the millions of types of law, why aren't you in admiralty law or something?
Well,
There's an obscure one.
I know. I could go back a couple steps. I'll tell you why I went to law school. This is a third career for me. And I went to law school because I was caught up in there was a corporate downsizing that sort of went on in the economy in probably the early 90s.
Yeah, there was. There was several of them through that period of time. Yeah.
Yes, and I got caught up in that. I was a young professional, and
What field or what area were you working
I was
in?
working in entertainment.
You were?
Yeah, I was.
What did you do? Now you got my curiosity. I have to ask this now. What did you do in the entertainment industry?
In the casino industry, I worked for a casino in Reno doing entertainment and special events.
You were in a croupier or something here.
No. Well, yeah, I'm not going to go there. No.
All right.
That's another conversation
Come on,
altogether.
7. All right, here we go. So, all right, so that's a really, really far afield. You're working in entertainment, so they're booking shows, they're doing all sorts of stuff at these big casinos, right?
Yeah, it was great, and I loved it. And then all of a sudden, someone came to me at 5 p.m. and said, "Thank you very much. We no longer need you."
Was it a Friday? It always seems to be on a Friday that they let people
I
go.
honestly don't remember. It was so incredibly devastating at the time. But I do remember that it was the impetus to do something different. And so
And maybe to take control of your own destiny here.
Yes.
Right.
And I wanted to do something where, unless I mess up completely,
Right.
Nobody can come to me and say, thank you very much.
You're
Although they
out.
can, but I still have my license.
Right.
So I wanted something with a little more security. So that was, I wish I could say it was some burning purpose to be a lawyer. And then when I got there, I didn't want to be an entertainment lawyer because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to deal the rest of my career with these people. No.
I was an entertainment publicist. I handled Johnny Mathis and Anthony Quinn, a whole bunch of, so I'm very familiar with the big egos and the big, I'm supposed to be an entertainment publicist and I'm picking up Joan Collins' laundry. Yeah.
Yeah,
how
it's not
important
quite
that
as
was.
glamorous as everybody says,
No.
right? But I loved my time. I loved doing it. It was a great experience. But that was the path I was on. And then I also wish I could say that I had a burning desire to be an employment lawyer. But I do, actually. But I didn't get there because of that. I got there because I had gone to work at a small law firm, and we had a need for an employment lawyer. We had some of our
Hey, Teresa, you're an employment lawyer now here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you want to do this? And there was a big debate on whether I wanted to do it.
Right.
So I had taken a couple prior litigation cases, and I really liked litigating. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I worked with 2 wonderful attorneys who really loved to litigate, and that had a lot to do with it. So,
And that's a big separation law. You quickly decide, am I ever going to see the inside of a courtroom or not? Some love it. That's where my father pictured me. I could never have pictured myself sitting in there arguing Perry Mason style or something. But I think that, so you decided you liked the excitement of being in a trial, the uncertainty of it, the thrill of the moment.
Well, it's certainly a rush. I don't know where the enjoyment part comes out of that at some point. But No, I really did. I did enjoy doing it, and I learned a tremendous amount about who I am as a person, and who I am as a litigator.
What did you learn?
One of the things that comes to mind most is I had no idea my brain could work in a particular way. I remember my very first trial, I took witnesses, just the witnesses, just a witness, and I'm standing there.
So you're the one that because there's usually several lawyers at the table, and you're assigned to interrogate this witness or walk this witness through their testimony?
Yeah, exactly. So the senior partner had first chair, and I have what they call second chair.
Right.
So they had the main witnesses and the client, and I took some secondary witnesses. And I remember I stood up, and I'm standing at the podium, and it was a jury trial, and I started questioning this person, and I was amazed that I could ask the question, listen to the response, formulate a question that wasn't necessarily on my sheet.
Yeah,
because you never want to ask a question you don't know the answer to, because that'll get you in trouble.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Of all of my entire first year of law school, that's one of the first things that they told us. And they told us this story, and I've never forgotten it since. I'm going to share this with your audience here. Why should you never ask a question you already know the answer to? So the story the professor told me was some case that he'd read about or been involved in. And it was just somebody had been accused of biting off somebody's nose. Okay?
What?
So you only got two people. You got the you got the person who was accused, and the person, the defendant, and one witness. There's three people in the whole trial. One witness saw this. So the defense lawyer stands up and says to the witness, "Did you see my client bite her nose off?" "No, I did not." End of story. Case won. But he couldn't resist. "Then how dare you accuse my client? Why do you think my client bit her nose off?" "Because I saw him spit it out."
Oh.
So there you go. So victory to defeat.
That's got to be a Virginia thing.
I
didn't learn that.
You didn't learn that? I thought that was universal. Okay.
No, I didn't learn that one.
As silly as that sounds, crude as that is, it's the point that you never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. And that's not something most of us do. We always ask questions we don't know.
Absolutely. And at that point I was still asking, based on what I knew from interviewing this witness. I knew what the responses were going to be, but they weren't necessarily questions that I had formulated ahead of time. And
so when you go off the sheet, that's dangerous territory.
Very dangerous. Right. But I was able to continue to, it's just amazing how your brain works that way. I was able to be doing multiple things at once in my head while standing in front of a jury looking like I knew absolutely what I was doing, and I wasn't nervous at all.
Right. And you could guide the conversation in the moment.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what we're going to ask you to do here in this show when we come back. We're going to ask you to guide us through what we're going to see in this coming show over the weeks and months ahead on workplace perspective, as you bring your own unique workplace perspective and background to this topic that I think is on every business's mind. We'll be right back with all that and more right after we hear a word from these people.
Hello, it's me, the designer jeans in the back of your closet. What happened to us? I used to summer in the Hamptons, and now I'm stuck behind a pair of sweats. Okay, maybe I never really fit you right, but I got a lot more Sunday fun days left in me. So take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff. Create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Okay. Interesting idea. Take your designer jeans and put them to use here. Okay. I don't know where you found that one, but that's a good one here. All right. So we've talked about you and who you are and your unique path to the law and to this particular part of the law. And I've expressed my own eagerness to learn more because I just think it's more complex and confusing than it's ever been, employment law. But you confuse me even more because you don't just approach it like most firms from either defending the employers against those rats, the employees that are out to steal and sue you for everything, and nor do you just focus on attacking those evil employers like me who are just out to rape and pillage the world and protect the poor, helpless employees. You really try and straddle a line of both. Talk about that. That's got to be very unique, where you don't just focus on employer defense or employee, what would you say, cases.
Well, it's either plaintiff side or the employee side or the employer side.
Right.
Two sides to the bar.
You're sort of trying to walk down the middle and say, "Can't we all get along here?" That doesn't make sense.
Well, kind of. I'm not too kumbaya. It doesn't pay. I'm an attorney. I can't be the nicest person in the room. But I do think...
Let's not fight. Let's not switch. Let's just come together here. Right?
I do think that there is a point in a relationship between the employer and the employee where risk can be avoided, if not reduced, significantly on both sides. And that's sort of where the idea for my firm, my law firm, Saffire Legal, came, as well as this podcast. Mm-hmm. So I do try to, I didn't leave my litigation firm to become a defense attorney, and I don't do any form of litigation, which frees me from a litigation bias one way or the other.
Okay.
Which I like. And I do think that it puts me in a unique perspective to talk about both sides of the bar, both sides of that employer-employee relationship. Mm-hmm. My legal experience, the law firm that I worked at, we did a little bit of both. So I was the face of our plaintiffs, our face of our employees in court, and my partner was the face of our defense clients in court. But we were a very small litigation firm, so everything's going out with our names on it. So we had a lot of brainstorming sessions on both of those types of cases. Mm-hmm. So that puts you in a very unique position to see things through both lenses. And I hope that that's what we're going to bring to Workplace Perspective. We never want to leave behind one perspective or the other, because just like in the law, in the workplace, there's always two sides to the story.
And it seems like, now maybe I'm putting words into your mouth or into my own impression, I'm influencing the discussion here, but it seems like a different type of lawyer is needed for both. If I'm going to defend a corporation, I'm trying to look at the greater good, don't set a precedent that's going to cause problems to all sorts of small businesses. Come on, give us all a break. Maybe this guy's a rat, but don't go too far out in your decision. Whereas if I'm an employee, if I'm defending the plaintiffs, attacking the employers, I would think I got to get into a lot of emotional stuff. Look how hard they are. Look how bad this person is. I mean, it would seem like more of an emotional argument, or is that just me trying to be the showman again here and take advantage of that?
Well, I think when you're taking on someone's argument, so attorneys are amazing creatures because we are trained to think both sides.
Yes, right. I always found that kind of disturbing. The fact that in law school, I'd say who should win. They say who could win. It's not up to you. You're really not supposed to be the decider. You're supposed to give your best, whichever side you're on. Zealous
advocacy, and I can say that I have seen zealous advocacy on both sides of the bar. I had the very good fortune of having very good working relationships with my defense counsel that I opposed, that were on the other side of my cases. And I hope they can say the same thing about me and my firm. But I think that in litigation is different than a little bit of kind of the training aspect of it. So litigation, you have to pick a side and you have to zealously represent that client.
You fight, right.
And so I think that I can say that over the years, I'm not sure that either side is served by anyone who is so down the road, drink the Kool-Aid kind of a perspective on their particular client. So those who feel that, on the defense side, the employer can do no wrong, and every employee is a malingerer, and right. And on the other side of that, there are plaintiff side attorneys who also go too far, who believe that every employer is bad and every
right.
employee has a valid case, and that's just not realistic. There are cases out there where there are employers who have done the wrong thing. There are cases out there where employees have been wronged, and I think that those truly need to be zealously advocated. But I think that the perspective that I want to bring is something that takes all things in moderation and the best of those arguments on both sides, and helps
look at the whole picture.
Helps to look at the whole picture. Helps. I got to speak last year for the first time at a great organization, the Professionals and HR Association, at their annual meeting in Long Beach. And I think I was one of the very first attorneys who had done plaintiff's work that had gotten to speak to the group, because traditionally, they always have defense side attorneys come and speak.
Help us protect ourselves. Don't bring in the dirty rats that attack us here. Right.
But I had two great opportunities. One was at the annual convention in Long Beach to talk about both sides of the thing the situation relationship when it came to disability discrimination. And it's amazing to think that I think that things that should be really, like, everyone should know, people are amazed. They don't realize that employees see things in a particular light.
Right.
And I also was fortunate enough to be able to, for that same organization, to be a part of a panel that spoke at a couple of different local meetings on lessons learned from the plaintiff's side. And those were awesome because there were 3 plaintiff side attorneys and me, and we got to talk about, lessons that are important to know, perspectives that they should be aware of from the employee's side.
And too often, I don't see anybody trying to show both sides of the argument. That isn't what I think of an attorney doing. Attorney's there to zealously present one side and one side only, even if they know there's more to the argument. And you're saying, now, because you're not going in and doing litigation, you do what when you go into a client? Who are your clients and what do you do for them?
It just depends. I get calls from employees who say that they think that they might be experiencing wrongful conduct. They're not sure how to handle it. What can they do? And I also get calls from employers saying, not the same employer, by the way, just to be clear.
Just to be clear.
But I also get calls from businesses who say that, we think we might have the ideal client is someone who thinks they might have a situation. While there's still time to resolve the situation, maybe walk back some conduct that could be perceived to be not what it actually is, and to repair that relationship before it goes any farther. And hopefully, if not, you can never zero out the risk because you can never stop someone from filing a lawsuit.
Right.
But you can try to shed a little light and share some experience.
You can make yourself a little more bulletproof here.
You
less
can.
likely to face that thing. So do you go in and then try and keep them appraised of all the employment issues? We're going to talk a lot about them. Oh, my goodness, not just sexual harassment, all those kinds of things in the news, but, I didn't pay you your overtime, or I didn't give you your lunches, and we even though you didn't want a lunch, and so I let you not take a lunch, and now suddenly you're going to come back and sue me for the missing lunch, and, now I'm sounding like a scared employer again here. But all these types of things that are out there, ADA compliance and other sorts of workplace rules that we seem to have more of here in California than anywhere else in the nation. I don't know if that's good or that's bad, but it's certainly a challenge.
Well, we certainly have a lot of employee protection in California,
right.
And it's always been the case. And for me, when I talk to everybody, I talk about education on both sides. I advocate very strongly for employers not to fear the educated employee. And when I come in to do a training... And
it would seem like that's the opposite. I just hope they don't know about this stuff.
Sometimes I think employers... I think the traditional view is that if you come in and tell them, that's educating them, and then they're going to go do it.
Yeah, right.
But I have found
I hadn't thought about that.
Right.
Yeah, I think I get a case here.
In my experience, I think that, and this is based on years of doing, intake calls and talking to employees who call and say, hey, I think I might... people are woefully unaware of what's actually unlawful conduct.
Yes.
And so
yes.
I think that even that's part of repairing that relationship. As long as somebody understands that nepotism is not illegal, generally speaking. I know there's, I don't want to get into
specifics. Might be a dumb
specifics.
idea, but it's not illegal.
Right, it's not illegal. And it's also not...
Nor is favoritism. I like him better than I like you.
As long as it's not based on a protected classification.
Right.
And there are a lot of things that go on in the workplace that people feel are morally wrong. And that because it's morally wrong, it should be legally actionable, meaning
right.
I can file a lawsuit for it. And that's just not the case. And I find that when employees have a better understanding of what is and what is not, what their protections are, they're truly protected against, they have a better idea and they don't sweat the small stuff.
Yes.
Because you can really ruin an employer relationship if someone gets it in their head that they've been treated rudely or harassed in those layman's terms.
Been wrongly treated. Well, morally wrongly is different than legally wrongly.
Yes, yeah. And so I think having a good understanding of that can stem what could be the seed of sowing a bad relationship with that employer and maybe saving that relationship.
So again, what do you do and for who?
What do I do and for who? I provide training and education as well as practical legal advice.
These are for specific topics, let's say sexual harassment or something like that. You go in and give them advice. You go do a seminar for their top-level employees or managers and stuff.
Yes. So I do employee training on everything from employee training and from the frontline employees to C-suite and all the way down.
Okay.
And I do not only legal trainings on manager trainings on wage and hour issues and disability discrimination and anti-harassment, anti-retaliation, but I'm also a certified business etiquette trainer.
That's the one I was saving to the end here. We're going to go on that one. That is... That's
the fun one.
That's the fun one. We're going to sort of tease that one. You want to come back? This isn't just dry, scary stuff. Oh, my God, I don't want to hear this, or I don't want to know it, or I hope my employees will listen. You got some fun, interesting things. Tell us quickly, what is business etiquette training? I didn't think anybody had. In a world where my mother grew up in the world of mismanners, and trying to, where people were trained to have good manners. Now we seem to live in the reality world of the Kardashians, where bad manners are in. No manners are good.
I don't know. I think good manners are always in fashion. But yes, I'm a certified business etiquette
So you
trainer.
teach them to put their little finger out when they drink the tea at the business? No.
I can do that. I do all kinds of stuff on the etiquette side. But when I say it, people go, "Oh, that's fun. You're going to tell us what fork. Come in and tell us what fork to use." And I say, "Well, I can do that, but I also talk more about how to handle difficult situations in the workplace and how to help people continue to form and to thrive with their business relationships. Anywhere from just regular employees who sit 2 feet in a cubicle next to someone who drives them batty all day long, to how do you make sure you can still maintain a working relationship and get things done, to Salesforce, how do you making sure that your brand is protected by making sure that your employees, when they go out into the world to represent your brand, that they are doing it in a way that's building those all-important business relationships. I
think of the ad I hear all the time I won't plug them, but there's a certain big plumbing company that call themselves the Smell Good Plumbers.
Absolutely.
Everybody thinks plumbers stink because you're in the sewer all day long, and that's their brand, is that they won't stink when they show up. So.
And I like the fact that I do have I still have a unique perspective on that as well, because I am an attorney, and so a lot of people think we talk about etiquette. Truly, they think, well, you're going to come in and tell us to be nice. And I tell people, I am not the nice police. I am not going to come in and tell your workforce to be the nicest people in the world, because sometimes that just doesn't work. It isn't, for me, it's not what people pay me to do sometimes, and it doesn't always work. But I do tell people.
But there are ways to get along.
How to be professional.
Right.
Oh, you can always be a professional. When you're having those difficult situations, you can always be a professional and maintain that relationship.
Can we raise a little money and pass a hat and see if we can send you to Washington? Because that's what's missing more than everything else. They don't want to seem to be play nice anymore here. And
we will not be talking about politics on this show.
Okay. All right. Good. It'll be a struggle when you talk about etiquette here. But okay, well, you've opened my eyes to whole different conversations than I had envisioned. Not just the dry, scary stuff about employment law that may make my heads roll or make employers run in fear, but also how we can get along and work together better and prevent a lot of these problems instead of taking them all to court.
We're going to have a lot of fun.
All right. I look forward to hearing all that and more on Workplace Perspective. How do people reach you if they want to learn more about your practice and this show?
You can check us out at saffirelegal.com. That's SAFFIRE legal.com.
Okay. And the show will be, right now we're going to do it every other week here on Wednesdays at 3:30 here on OC Talk Radio. All right. Tune in to hear more from the one woman who has a very unique perspective on workplaces, Teresa McQueen and Workplace Perspective.